I got to kick this thing off. Can I kick it off? 1, 2, 3, 4. Ladies and gentlemen, listen.
What's up, everybody? It's your boy Mar B, and you are listening to another episode of the Man Listen Show. Before we get started, let's hear a few words from our sponsors.
Hold on, be strong. Hold on, be strong.
Title Boxing Club of Maplewood is proud to be a sponsor of the Man Listen Show. Title Boxing Club of Maplewood offers dynamic boxing and kickboxing classes for all. Check us out on Instagram at Title Boxing Maplewood. Magic Streams is a cost-effective alternative to traditional cable, which includes over 2,500 live HD channels, including premium channels such as HBO, Showtime, Stars, and Cinemax. We offer local network and news channels, NFL Sunday Ticket, NBA League Pass, NCAA Sports Pass, pay-per-view, on-demand movies and TV shows, you name it. TV anywhere. Live TV on your iPhone, iPad, Amazon tablet, or Android mobile device tablet. For more information, contact us at magicstreamsmb@gmail.com. That's magicstreamsmb@gmail.com. All right, I'm going to start off with the crew. Arika, what's up with you?
Hi, I'm good.
All right, good to hear. C, how you doing?
I'm good, and you?
Doing real good, real good. Appreciate you. Lab, what's up, bro?
What's going on, man? What's going on, man? Just got back from Popeyes. They ain't had no sandwiches for me, though, man.
Nah, you know what, man? I went today. I know I'm trying to get healthy, man, and I went. That's probably why you ain't had no sandwiches, because I went there. But anyway, I went, and they ain't had no pickles, man. They ain't had no pickles to go on the sandwich, so I still got it. And I hate that we giving them free advertising. That sandwich was just all right, man. It wasn't all that, bro. It wasn't all that.
Nah, I ain't. Like I said, I probably ain't gonna try it for a minute, man. You know.
All right, that's cool. So today we have a special guest, Mrs. Kristina Jones. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, doing well. We're very glad to have you on the show. So Kristina is the founder and owner of More Grace Counseling, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
All right. Well, tell us more about the business and the type of treatment you provide, the type of services you provide, and everything that goes with it.
Okay, so I'm a licensed professional counselor, and I have my master's degree in counseling with an emphasis in couples and family therapy. So right now, and for the last, I would say, 4 years, I've been providing counseling to adults, children, couples, families. I'm trained to work with people who've experienced trauma, and so that's my area of specialty. Right now, I work for a nonprofit full-time in Kansas City, and I created my own business because my plan is to go full-time into private practice. That's my long-term goal, but I'm just getting started. Initially, so when I created the business, Real Talk Counseling and Mediation, and I felt really strongly about that name. But as I do a lot of mental health awareness, I feel that really what's needed out there is for us to have more grace with each other, and that's when I changed the name to More Grace.
You know what? And that's awesome, because part of the reason why we had Kristina on the show is because we wanted to talk about how we interact with one another. And I really like the piece that you talked about in terms of real talk versus More Grace. And we'll get back into it. I'm going to ask you a few more questions about More Grace Counseling. Mm-hmm. Now, you're located in the Kansas City area, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. One of the things when I talk to Black women across the country, and we talk about mental health, we talk about seeking therapy, seeking treatment, one of the things that always comes up is I can't find somebody that looks like me in my area, whether they live in a rural area or they just live in a place where there's not anybody that looks like them that they can go and they're comfortable with and seeking treatment. So, what are your suggestions for people that are in that situation? And do you offer any type of services like Skype, where they can meet with you on Skype or Hangout, Google Hangout, or anything like that? What would you suggest to somebody that's in that situation?
Well, first, I just want to validate that that's a real problem. So there is a very small number of mental health professionals of color anywhere, all over. We are very underrepresented. I think that it's part of systemic oppression is the reason why we're underrepresented. And so one of my goals, honestly, is to spread as much awareness as I can about the importance of mental wellness, well-being. And I even try to talk to high school students, young people everywhere, to expose them to the career path of possibly being a mental health professional, because that's how we're going to get more Black and brown therapists to be available to people. But that is a real problem everywhere. So it's very real when people say that. Right now, I am not offering counseling like via the internet. I'm actually getting trained in order to be able to do that, though. So I would be practicing outside the scope of my expertise at this moment. So I'm trying to prepare myself to do that, to try to, reduce that barrier that you spoke about. I want to make myself available to people wherever they are. So I'm going through some training and learning how to do that ethically, and what's important, about HIPAA and keeping people's information private, and what are the services that are best. Like, I don't think Google Hangout is HIPAA compliant. So
Okay.
I'm looking into what services are best for doing therapy online.
Well, that's cool. And when you're ready and when you're compliant and ready to put it out there, we definitely will help you with the mail list and show and using our platform to spread the word. So, we make a big push on this show about mental health.
I appreciate that.
No problem. We make a big push trying to remove the stigma that's attached to mental health. In what ways do you see mental health treatment, people taking it more seriously? In what ways do you see that helping our community?
So I think just the boom, and how right now, I think it's kind of trendy, to be honest. Self-care and mental health awareness. It's becoming trendy right now, and on social media, a lot of people are talking about it more, and I think it's great. Whether it's trendy or not, I think it's a good thing, because I don't think that you can talk about mental health too much. I think it's important to just keep talking about it and putting out valid information. So I think it's benefiting our community, because, now there are so many conversations about what is mental well-being. People are talking about their symptoms. People are being vulnerable. They're actually saying, well, sometimes I get anxious too. And they're realizing that they're not the only people that deal with what they're dealing with. And I think that's a big help to our community, especially since, Black people do not fool with therapy. We just don't. And so that's something that I would like to change, because therapy is for everybody. I think there are very good reasons why Black people don't fool with therapy, but I would like to start to eliminate the stigma also, and change the fact that we don't maybe take care of ourselves as well as we could.
Because first of all, and Erika, Lab, y'all can jump in when y'all want to. First of all, you don't tell our business outside this household. So a lot of us got to get over that hump.
Facts.
And then I also think there's the financial piece too that limits some of us from seeking therapy.
Religion also.
I agree with you.
So quick to tell Black people to pray about everything. And so they think they automatically go to their pastor, and their pastor's not always qualified to have those conversations.
You are right.
I think the other thing too is, historically, when you don't have access to like Black counselors and whatnot, if you did go to a white counselor, you don't have faith that they would, understand your position, or that they may take it wrong and you end up institutionalized somewhere, because to them, what I think and say may be crazy, but somebody else who's experienced life from my perspective may understand me a little bit better, understand this is just how my mind works. And I think it's a little bit uncomfortable to try to bare your soul to someone of a different race who doesn't understand Black struggle.
You're absolutely right. You are absolutely right. And I've experienced, though, I mean, I'm a therapist and I've been in therapy, and I have experienced that, having a white therapist and saying that to them, like, do you even, is it going to make you uncomfortable for me to talk to you about the racism I experience or the oppression that I experience? Are you going to start with the white guilt? Like, is it going to be a struggle for you, for me to process my stuff? And I think sometimes it is. And you bring up a valid point. It's difficult for us to get in front of somebody who doesn't look like us or maybe connect our experience and deal with the real stuff, because being Black affects every part of our mental health. Mm-hmm. It does.
It does. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, speaking about our mental health, last week we had a show and we talked about Jay-Z and the NFL, and it got a little bit heated on here. I mean, they teamed up on me, talked bad about me throughout the show, and and
okay,
come on, man.
That's false.
Look, I tried to remain neutral. I tried to remain neutral as much as I could, and it just kind of,
as a Nas fan, yeah.
Yeah, people.
What's with this victim speech?
Right.
Well, whatever. But I'm joking around. We're still tight as a crew. But one of the things that we noticed was that the Jay-Z NFL partnership, that discussion was very polarizing. Either you were on one side or you were on the other.
Yeah.
And each side felt that the other side was completely crazy and ridiculous. And I saw people, going after other folks, trying to tear them down. It definitely was not as civil as a debate could be, and I thought it was more counterproductive. I mean, I was joking around. We all made our points during the last show, and there's some stuff we agreed upon, some stuff we disagreed upon, and that's part of what we do as a podcast. But I've noticed that I'm seeing a lot more of that, and maybe that's driven by what cable news has shown, where it's more of the pundits going after each other and being more and more belligerent with one another. But I think that we as Black people, we just don't get down like that, and I see us going more towards that direction. So when you talk about how you wanted to name your practice Real Talk, but then you went to More Grace, I thought that was very apropos, because that's what we want to talk about. How can we develop the tools and give our listeners the tools so that when they interact with other folks, how can they discuss things and not just go for the jugular? How can we be civil, understand each other's points, agree upon where we can agree upon things, and then just leave the rest alone?
So this is such a great topic to be talking about, because you kind of hypothesize, like, what brought us to this place where we're doing this with each other, where we're having uncivilized discourse, where we can't just agree to disagree, and it gets real personal and all that. And I think there are a few more things in addition to what you said. I think that the popularity of social media and us being able to watch all day long people interact and exchange energy with each other and see what people say, whether it's extreme, whether it's ideas that they agree with or whatever. It's energy exchange, idea exchange all day long, and we're watching it on whatever social media platform. Then you have the fact that we as a human race, we don't really attend to ourselves as well as we should. So one of the things that happens is, like, I'll see something that you write, Marv, on social media, and I completely disagree, and I get triggered as if you've just offended me. Like, I get triggered and I take it personally, and then I want to lash out at you rather than actually pausing for a second and trying to figure out, why am I so triggered by what he wrote? Marv did not just write that just to me. Like, he put that out to the whole World Wide Web, and whoever can respond to it how they want. But I feel personally triggered by what he just wrote, and now I'm about to just go off. And I think that people don't actually take that pause and figure out, why am I so bothered by this? And it's funny because, Marv, if you recall, at one point we had a little in comment debate one time, I think on Facebook,
Who
in the
did?
comments of some posts.
Me debating somebody on social media. I'm shocked.
You remember that?
Yeah, I want to hear more about this.
That's every day, all day.
Go
Marv
ahead.
makes those posts just to trigger folks on Facebook.
Right.
No.
Like, that's his mission.
No, I don't. I'm very opinionated, and I think sometimes, yes, I do realize that, you know what, this may trigger people. And as I've gotten older, I am more sensitive to that. So certain things I realize I just don't need to say because the juice isn't worth the squeeze in terms of potentially hurting somebody's feelings. But I do think that sometimes people project what they're feeling on you, and it's not really healthy for a debate. So when it comes to that, you know, I really don't care. But go ahead, talk about this situation, Kristina, where we had a little back and forth. Tell the listeners.
And it's funny because I don't even remember what the post was about. It was something having to do with our people, though. And you know, you get real passionate about Black folks. So it was some kind of post about something Black people do or don't do, something. And I remember reading what you wrote, feeling like Marv is judgmental. And I just got super triggered by what you wrote. Came for you in the comments. And then we went back and forth a few times, not anything harsh, because that's not even like me, you know? And so we were just having a dialogue, but it was seemingly never ending. Like we were just back and forth, back and forth.
Yeah.
And then eventually I thought to myself, Chris, you are doing the exact same thing that you're mad at Marv for. Like you're frustrated and triggered because you feel like you're being judgmental or making a statement that's generalized across the board that you don't agree with. And then you're coming for him like you wrong. And I had to tell myself, like, you're triggered by something else. It ain't even Marv. Like you just need to take several steps back. Not even Marv. Like what's going on with you? And having an internal conversation, I was able to figure out why what was being said bothered me so much, but it wasn't you at all. And I'm a therapist. You know what I mean? So I think we all are human beings and we get triggered sometimes. We all come with a whole lifetime of experiences. And those experiences, especially when they leave kind of like a trauma residue on us, we might bump up against something later in life that triggers us. We see something somebody says something in a certain way, and we're like, ugh, who do you think they are? Or, you know, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And we react. Like we're reactionary. And I think that's why people go too far sometimes, is they don't take that pause to say, why am I so bothered right now? Is this really about this person? Is it really about me? Is it about something deeper than that? What's really going on in this exchange? And that totally happened for me in the exchange with you. I was thinking to myself, this isn't even about Marv. This is about something I feel on a deeper level. Yeah. Let me get about these comments. And I think that's what I said to you. I was like, you know what? I'm about to bow out of this exchange because I'm not really trying to argue with you. But it was something. It was something silly. We were going back and forth.
But look at us now.
But yeah,
look
that
at
was
us
an eye-opening experience even for me.
Yeah, and look at us now. You gracing the show, and everything's good. If the Bloods and Crips can make it true, so can you and I. You know what I'm saying? So.
Well, I have a lot of respect for you, you know. I think that was the other thing that caused me to pause, was to say, why are you arguing with Mark? Like, what are you doing right now?
It's all good. I appreciate you. But, you know, Rick and I have another hypothesis about why people go too far on social media. And Rick and I both think that a lot of people get brolic on social media because they can't get those hands when you behind a computer instead of in front.
Yeah, I definitely think that there's a certain level of emboldenment that people feel when they're safe in their house, because, you know, when we were growing up, we had these conversations face to face. And so, like I was saying last show, me and Marv, like you said, I got a lot of respect for him. We disagree about something, I'm really going to watch my tone face to face. But if I'm behind my computer screen, you know, shoot, you could be as big as you want to be in Texas, you can't do nothing to me in Missouri. So I could get all kinds of reckless in theory, which is how I think these people think nowadays, which to me, if I wouldn't say it or do it in your presence, I wouldn't say it or do it out of your presence. And that's just, I think that's how we move. A lot of people move from our generation, I think, because that's how we were raised. And I don't think that that's being taught to our kids these days.
Yeah. Like you said, I want to come back to that term when you said trauma residue, because I think that is more apparent on social media than we think in terms of how people react to different topics, different situations, and you saying that makes me reflect on how I respond to people, because sometimes depending on my mood, I may just okay, man, it's not really worth going back and forth, but sometimes I'm all about the business and I'm ready to go back and forth and let someone have it and really go in, and it's really counterproductive, and it's really against what we're trying to do with this show. We're trying to inform people. We're trying to make people better, bring people closer together in terms of how we think, so that we can be more on one accord and have a code of conduct for how we pursue and how we respond to different situations that come up that affect our community. But that trauma residue is something that really just stuck out to me, what you just said. Can you go a little bit deeper into that?
Yeah, so trauma has a really funny way of impacting us from a very young age. Trauma is really unique to an individual. Like, what's traumatic to me might not be traumatic to you or the next person. So each person has a very individual relationship with their experiences and how they impact them. And really, trauma, the definition of it, is just an experience that has caused you to be disturbed in some way, or, sometimes we have this idea when we say trauma that it has to be some giant event, that it has to be something life threatening, but really, lots of things can be traumatic. And if you start talking about the thing that we have in common, which is childhood, all of us experience traumatic things during our childhood because we're kids, we're vulnerable, we have less life experience to tell us that we're safe in certain situations. Sometimes we'll experience something, be completely safe, but not know that we are because we're kids. And when a child experiences something that is traumatic, usually what happens is that the brain, because children's brains are egocentric and our brains are built when we're kids to turn inward and reflect inward. So if something negative happens to us, we automatically attribute it to ourselves. We automatically start to wonder, what about me caused this to happen to me? What about me caused, why did I deserve this? Or somehow I did. I don't know how, but I did. Something about me is bad. So there are a lot of negative beliefs that get associated with traumatic or bad experiences in our childhood. So if you fast forward, and most of us carry those things forward because very few of our parents knew how to help us process through certain things, or took us to therapy, or gave us an experience that would allow us to process. Some of our parents didn't even know about the traumatic stuff that was happening to us.
That's true.
As kids. I had a gang of my traumatic experiences with my cousins out in the neighborhood doing stuff my mama still don't know to this day. So, but a lot of those things as a kid, I attributed these negative things happening to me to be about who I am as a person and what I'm worth and what I deserve. Okay, so we carry those things forward as we're developing our sense of self and identity. And we will continue to have experiences that feel similar to experiences when we were young. And so our brain is trained to recognize, like, oh, that feels just like when this happened. And so if this happened because I'm bad, this must also be happening because I'm bad. And it's just kind of an automatic mechanism. Our brain is a muscle. It's trained to remember certain things and put meaning to it. And if there's not anybody interceding to create the right meaning to pair with an experience, then your brain just comes up with what makes the most sense at the time. It's just how we're wired.
That makes sense. Because Lav and I talked about this in C and I grew up in the same hometown, Topeka, Kansas, and we talked about the violence that we came up with, growing up. I remember, Lab, you chime in on this. I remember because Lab, we the same age. I remember vividly thinking that if I could just make it to 21, I've lived life because so many people were getting shot and killed or going to jail. And I thought if I could just make it to 21, I'll be okay. Now, looking back on that, that's ridiculous. That a young man full of vigor would think that if I could just make it to 21, I'm okay. Because if I had stopped living at 21, there's so much of life that I would not have experienced. So that trauma that we all went through, some of us, like you said, we didn't even know, and I think it still affects us, and it comes up in the different discussions that we have. So when we talk about black on black crime, there's the people that say, you know what, we need to do this, and we need to look at ourselves first. And then there's those of us like C and I is like, nah, it's bigger than that. It's more systemic racism. We're able to look at it more rationally, but you don't know how somebody may have been affected, what type of, what loved one they may have lost due to gun violence, and how that affects us. So, yeah, it's something that's very deep.
And a lot of it stays with you. So when I called it residue, that's kind of why I call it that, because it just kind of stays on you.
Right.
Sorry, B-Lab.
No, you're good. You said earlier that you think it's kind of a trend for self-care and things like that. But when did that occur, though, do you think? Because I'm older, but I'm not old. And like I mentioned on here before, in my high school, every year we had people that got shot and killed. And there was no counselors at school on Monday. There was the teachers, nowadays, they'll have counselors on site and things like that. That wasn't that long ago, And so, I always wondered, was it go back to kind of like Columbine?
I was just about to say it. Columbine. That was it. It had to be.
Okay. Yeah.
It's sort of like, it's sort of like, and this is my opinion, it's sort of like the war on drugs. It was all good to just throw us under the jail, right? But as soon as you have this prescription drug opiate crisis, now we need treatment. Now we need therapy. I think it's just along the same thing. When it's us, it's not a problem. But when it starts to affect them, we have to address it, and we have to address it and treat them with compassion and honor their humanity.
Right. With compassion. Right.
So I'm going to agree with you 100%. Systemically, it's not like counseling and all of the interventions haven't always been around. But, the other day I was talking to a group of interns at work and was talking to them about the population that we serve. And I used the word underserved. Like we serve the underserved of Kansas City at the nonprofit where I work. And someone, like one of the white interns, kind of made this face. And I said, when I use the word underserved, what I mean is that, because I heard this somewhere else, and I said, I'm not saying that the resources are not available. They're available, but there are systems in place that keep them from being implemented where people need them the most. And I think the question that you just asked, Bilaf, is perfect example of that, because you're right. I mean, even in Black schools here in Kansas City today, there are not adequate counselors in the building to help students deal with what they're experiencing. I mean, Kansas City, there's shootings here every day, at least one. And, children are affected by that every day. And my son's school is pretty much, I feel like it's 96% Black. And they have a shortage of counselors. They don't have like this whole response to a shooting that happens in, the urban core or whatever, and have counselors on site to help. They don't do that. That's not the response today at his Black school. So I think what you said is absolutely right. It depends on who's being affected by it. It depends on, and even mental health is a westernized thing. I think if we think about roots of healing for Black and brown people, there's a huge spiritual component to that. There's a lot of indigenous practice that does not get taught in grad school for mental health professionals at all. So that's part of what I'm trying to connect to now that I am a professional and I'm in the field, being trained and trying to understand what were the indigenous practices that people use to heal, not just relying on Western philosophy of diagnosing or Western theories that we look at people's behavior through and Western interventions, because all that stuff is normed on white people. All of it, when you look at the research, and there's a lot of research, but if you look at it, it's mostly normed on white people. So, I mean, all of it is part of a larger system. I'm glad that we're talking about it, but at the same time, we have to be really intentional about finding the things that are helpful for our people and being present for our people.
I think it's interesting that you said you wanted to bring in stuff from like our ancestry and other things. Like, what do you mean specifically have you found so far that you wanted to include?
So it's very preliminary on this because there are not a lot of trainings, like actual former trainings out there that you can go to and learn about different practices, but I'm just doing a lot of reading. I've also tried to tap into some committees, like there's an actual within the American Psychology Association and the American Counselors Association, there are some smaller committees of Black therapists and Black counselors that are trying to do the work of researching more indigenous practices of healing. So I'm in kind of beginning stages of understanding that. And what really sparked that is me wanting to, this is so deep, but most interventions, like most therapeutic interventions that counselors use are researched and normed on white people. So there is a small group of people, like academic people, Blacks, that are researching the impact of perceived racism on Black and brown people, and then trying to develop intervention to help us heal from the trauma of racism and oppression. So I've been doing a lot of reading on that too, because I'm hoping to try to implement those practices, not invent them or invent anything new, but really try to look at what Black scholars are researching right now and kind of get on board with what they're doing. And because there's really not anything out there, there are just in the last couple of years, Black therapists are saying what I'm saying right now. Like, this is really all for white people, like this is great. And we want our people to heal and everything, but everything that we've been taught is about how to help white people heal. Even in school, the multicultural classes are geared towards white people working with brown people. They're not really teaching brown therapists how to be, work with different people. Everything is geared towards white people. So, and I know that's our education system, period. But there aren't enough people talking about the fact that there have been centuries of indigenous practices all over the world that people have been using to heal. How come we haven't tapped into that? How come there aren't papers or books written about that, or more? We're not talking about that more. So that's just something that I'm really trying to get into and explore right now.
I'm very open and honest about, me going to treatment and meeting with my therapist. It's probably like the best part of my week when I go and sit down with him, because there's certain times where we're talking like we homeboys, and there's certain times where it's tough talk that he's giving to me, and there's certain times when I'm just vulnerable and just trying to get it out. But one of the things that I appreciated about him was when we first sat down, there was a list of reading that he wanted me to do, and it all centered on a certain Afrocentric approach to mental health. And it wasn't always just about, read this book by Iyanla, even though a lot of people hate on Iyanla. I personally love Iyanla. So it was like that, reading the Browder Files, reading different books that really get you more accustomed to looking at things through an African lens or through a Black American lens. And when you talk about, why we had you on the show, approaching the topic on, how do we interact with one another through a mental health lens, I think, also putting that black lens, that black approach onto what we're doing is very important as well.
Are you afraid that you might have some pushback from, like the super Christians who are afraid of anything that isn't in line with Christianity? Like when you start incorporating things that are, like you said, more indigenous or maybe Afrocentric, which may reach back to some of the cultures and traditions from Africa. A lot of times I found that Christians are hesitant to learn about or incorporate anything that may be contrary to their Christian beliefs. Are you worried that may, distance some of your potential clients?
Not really. Like I'm not worried. I hadn't even thought about it. And the reason for that is because, so most therapists are trained, unless you go to like a seminary, but most therapists are trained to practice from a non-biased worldview. And all of our interventions are very neutral in terms of spirituality, but there is a place where you can create opportunity for a client to invite their spirituality into the session, even if it's not in line with what you believe. There are ways for you to ask the client to incorporate whatever spiritual practice is important to them into the session. And so even if I decide in my approach that I want to incorporate something that I've read about or something that I've learned about that is, predates theory and all of that, I would explain it to the clients the same way that I do with any other intervention. I would explain it to them, explain why I'm bringing this into the session, explain how it can marry very well with whatever it is that they believe, that it's not supposed to be counter to what they believe. And if anything, the intervention is to help them become closer to what they believe. So, for example, I'm going to give you an example. I got to participate in a couple of sessions of hypnotherapy myself. And it was really amazing, really, really amazing. And I have to tell you, when I first told my mom, she was like, "Oh no, that's the devil, that's the devil." And I was like, "Mom, get out of here." So I was telling her about in the hypnotherapy session, the therapist walked me through the process of inviting God because she knows what I believe. So she walked me through the process of inviting God into my experience with me. And most interventions and most of the ways that we do therapy really are so flexible that you can invite people to be their most authentic self while they're healing, no matter what the intervention is, So I'm not really worried that I would turn Christians off, just because all interventions have the potential to do that, But I think it's the way that you introduce things and the way that you try to marry what you're doing with who the client authentically is and what they need. So I'm not really worried about it, unless someone is if they're that defensive, they're going to be defensive about everything. Honestly, like it's not going to matter what I try to introduce.
We brought you on here, and we appreciate you. We have Mrs. Kristina Jones from More Grace Counseling. We as a crew, oftentimes we vibe on a lot of things that we say. There's times where we disagree, and it turns into a lively show. But one thing that's a reoccurring thing is the crew refuses to change their view on different food options, and pumpkin pie being one of them. So how do we get them to look at this from a more open-minded perspective and understand what we do? I understand they're coming from an African lens, but I think that, like you said, we need to stop being so polarized. How do I get them to understand the delight that I receive from eating pumpkin pie?
You know what, Marv? I don't know if I can help you with that.
You just like them.
Exactly.
I mean, are you trying to do some kind of? You asked me that right on the follow-up of the hypnotherapy story. Were you trying to do some subliminal changing of their minds around the pumpkin pie?
Yeah, I am because they give me a hard time every week, and I'm sick of it. You know what I'm saying? Especially C.
He trying to send us to the sunken place to get us to eat pumpkin pie.
It's not.
I actually heard that all Black people are allergic to pumpkin, so I can't really figure out how Marv's able to eat it.
Not all Black people are allergic to
He
pumpkin.
light skinned.
So light skin. Wow. You see how they do?
Y'all dirty. See, that's a whole nother topic. Too.
Wait a minute. No, we're definitely not gonna blame it on that. No.
Nah, yeah, because I get what you say, because C definitely is on the lighter side of the hue. Maybe I listen.
Hey, we're talking about you. We're not talking about me.
Yeah, but what's so
I don't eat pumpkin.
But what's so funny is seeing our kindred spirits. Both of us. The slave master definitely left his mark on our bloodline, but whenever we use our emojis online, it's the blackest emoji possible.
That's the only one I use.
That's the only one. That's the only one I use. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But what's funny is I use that with my kids. And they be like, "Hey, whose hand is that?" I'm like, "That's my hand. That's my hand." They're like, "Nah, that's not you. That's not you."
And then you have advertisement. You have to explain it. People are like, why do you keep using that one? Why do you use that? Even the one with the girl that puts her hand on her face, I always use the blackest one, the darkest one, always. People are like, why'd you use that? And then I'm like, man, come on.
Right.
You know why I used it.
Well, Kristina, we really appreciate you coming on the show. I think that it was very enlightening. I definitely wanted to talk about mental health, but I also wanted to talk about, how we interact with one another because that discussion between people that were supporters of Jay-Z, people who were skeptical and a little bit more cautious about, his moves with the NFL. I saw something that I think that I didn't really like because we need all hands on deck. That's one of my favorite phrases. We need all hands on deck. And in order for us to accomplish that, there has to be some way for us to reach some middle ground to be able to remove that trauma residue, stop projecting, and really say, okay, what can we agree upon? Can we agree that, okay, I may question the motives of Jay-Z, but I still, want to be able to see this brother succeed and hope that it works out best for Black people. Or you may be like, hey, yeah, I'm a real big fan of Jay-Z, but I do agree that he's partnering with people who have not always had the best interests of Black people in mind. So I want to see what happens as well. So being able to get more people to look at it from that perspective and take that approach, I think it'd be better for us as a people. And if we develop those skill sets, develop those tools, it could do nothing but benefit us going forward.
I think a lot of people were feeling betrayed. And, betrayal is a deep thing and comes from early experience. So sometimes stuff happens. It's very similar to that betrayal feeling that I felt a long time ago. So my reaction is, boom, I'm instantly betrayed. Forget him. He's canceled. There's no room for me being patient and seeing how this plays out. And so sometimes the underlying feeling that people have when they have these real quick reactions, you kind of want to peel back the layers with people and say, okay, what's under there? And a lot of times it's those deep feelings like betrayal. Now you in cahoots with the man, like it's all these different things that are deeper than the surface thing that we're usually talking about. So that's that trauma residue.
I think we definitely learned a term, trauma residue. That's something that's going to stick with me, and I can't wait to use that in everyday conversation and
me too.
And throw that on somebody. But tell the people how they can find you. Tell them how they can find you on social media and everything else.
Okay, so More Grace Counseling and Mediation Services is getting underway. I am going to be taking counseling clients soon. I have a website that is moregracecounseling.com, so you can find there. I'm also on Instagram. My Instagram handle is More Grace Counseling. All updates about when I am taking clients and we'll have openings and things like that. I'll also have the ability to book on my website. So check the website out for more information about me and services that I'll offer, and just keep checking it for updates. I'll try to put updates out on social media, but I'm really excited to be in the community as a brown face attached to mental wellness and wanting to increase, our presence and decrease stigma around mental health. So reach out to me with questions or anything like that. In the interim where I'm not taking clients, I always like to refer people to other Black therapists that I know. So hit me up.
You know what? And I really, really want for you to have as much success as possible. I can tell that your heart is in the right place. And, just to share a personal story, there was a real traumatic event that happened in Kansas City, and a young cousin of mine was at the grocery store and was caught in crossfire and was shot. She was shot a couple times in the stomach and went to the hospital, and thankfully she survived. And I talked about that on my social media, just sort of processing it and soliciting prayers for my cousin. And Kristina reached out to me and was able to send me resources for my family, that they were able to use and to able to help them, not only just my cousin who was shot, but her grandmother, her parents, and everyone else. So we talked about the access. It's definitely good that we have people like Kristina Jones in place that care about us and want to see us be as healthy as we can be mentally, as a people. So definitely, when you have someone like her, I want to make sure that we promote them and we try to help them be as successful as possible, because the bigger you are, the more young Black girls will see you and they'll want to do what you do, and we won't have that gap that we talked about earlier where people can't find somebody that looks like them to pursue treatment. So I want you to continue to do what you're doing, be encouraged, and I'll just thank you for being on the show.
Thank you. Thank you all for having me. I really appreciated all the dialogue and jokes and stuff. This is great. I hope you have me back maybe one time.
We're gonna
give you guys some updates.
Yeah, we'll definitely have you back. We took a lot on the jokes today, right? Usually laughing and was cutting up, but we wanted to make sure that we gave the topic the respect that it deserves. So another good show. Make sure that you follow us on social media at Man Listen Show. You can follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. You can listen to the show on SoundCloud, YouTube, iTunes, and Google Play. And we're gonna holler at you next time. Peace.
Bye.
Peace.
Still hating on Jay. We ain't on title.